wise fellow said this: "Everything that can be counted does not necessarily count. And everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted." Do you all know who said that? No? Nobody? Einstein, of course. Who else would say something like that, right? I'm such an old-fashioned, sort of liberal, humanist, word-besotted kind of person that I really agree with what Alfred said there. And I really dislike the sort of trend I see in journalism towards stories by the numbers. You know, we're seeing them all the time now. It's as if the weekend box office receipts are the only important thing to be said about a new film when it comes out, you know, instead of any kind of critical assessment. Don't like that at all. But sometimes, of course, I'm proven wrong in my beliefs. And the story that I'm here to tell you about this evening is really a shining example of how numbers do count, and of how numbers that are routinely counted and then ignored and shelved can actually be taken off the shelf, dusted off, and compiled with other numbers to create stories that are extremely dramatic, disturbing, and very, very important. So this story began with a native counselor from the Hobbema, Alberta Reserve, a fellow named Vern Saddleback, who pulled two sets of data about his reserve. First, the tally that Indian Affairs keeps of all children ages 5 to 18 years old on the reserve, and then the number of children registered in school by the local band officials in order to get their funding. When he compiled them and compared them, Vern found that 40% of the children of Hobbema were not in school. It's not that they just weren't playing hooky, they weren't even registered for school, 40% of them. So then came the next step, really a giant step, which was taken by Elise Stolte of the Edmonton Journal. And she wondered, you know, whether this Hobbema result was an anomaly or not. And so she spent months and months accumulating the same numbers for every single native reserve in the province of Alberta, 44 of them. And what she discovered was that on average, Vern was right, 39% of the kids, that's over 11,000 children, were simply missing. They weren't going to school, they just weren't registered, they weren't there. And Elise dubs them the ghost children of the reserve. Now, there were a few of the reserves. Sunchild was one, Ermineskin was one, that weren't doing too badly. Their absentee rates, if you will, were only sort of in the 15 or 16% range. But there were many others that were way above the average, 60%, 70% and more of kids just not there. And Elise actually, she created sort of a major graphic and an interactive map so that you can actually go to the journal website and you can see this appalling story broken down reserve by reserve. By the time I came to the end of Elise's reportage, I just sat there stunned. I was thinking, how can any country that pretends to as high a level of civilization and equality as Canada does, allow that many children to just slip through the cracks completely? 11,000 children, and that's in just one province. A society that can't educate its children has very, very deep and unexplored problems, it seems to me. And of course, Elise, being a good journalist, she didn't stop with the numbers. The thing about good investigative journalism is that it takes you on and on. It leads you on. You find yourself lifting up rocks and looking at what's underneath. and finding more and more problems and conundrums, many of which have nothing to do with the original numbers at all, but rather with the way that people live their lives and the kind of obstacles that they are constantly encountering. And in a moment, I'll invite Elise Stolte to come up here and talk a little bit about some of the things that these numbers helped her to discover and report on. But just before I do, I have one more general comment that I want to make. I recall that 3 years ago when we did the first Hillman Prize here, I was standing up here talking about another Native story. That one was from the Winnipeg Free Press, and it had to do with the execrable water conditions on that province's reserves, Manitoba reserves. And if I remember correctly, it was the only story on any aspect of Aboriginal affairs that was submitted for the prize that year. This year, I'm really pleased to see that along with Elise's really stellar reporting for the Edmonton Journal, there were 3 other major entries, an episode of Eighth Fire from CBC, plus pieces from APTN and from CBC Saskatchewan, that dealt in great depth with Native issues. It seems to me that Canadian journalists are finally starting to do a very good job of uncovering not just the disgrace of the, settler-native relationship and history, but also the incredible complexity of what we have all inherited from that, and what we must spend more time and thought and money, if need be, to ameliorate. And the work that Elise has done is a huge step in that direction, and on behalf of the Hillman jury, I congratulate her and ask her to come up here.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Sandy Hillman Foundation as well. I think it's really important what you're doing, bringing these awards here. It's a major encouragement for the reporters who win. And it's also really important for the reporters who can go to your website and find the links to all of the other shortlisted articles, all 21 of them. It's, I think, often good journalism, we're such a big country that good journalism can get lost if it's done on a regional basis, and it was really encouraging to look at the other work that's being done. I wanted to say congratulations to the other winners as well, to Katie and to Glenn and to Stephen. Thanks also for the words that you said, Bronwyn. I appreciate those. For me, the story was a lot about the numbers, but it was even more, the second story that I did was even more important to me as well. Once I had the numbers, I was able to go up to Cadott Lake and spend a full day with one of the students who was in school. She was a young mother who has 2 children. She's 19, and still in school, and trying to understand why she was still in school when so many others weren't was fascinating for me. I really wanted to know why these children and young adults weren't in school, because it is an astronomical figure of the number of kids who aren't. But also, after getting to know her, she put her children, she realized that she couldn't be in school having 2 young children, and she gave them to family to take care of. And you could see that was really, really hard for her. She cried as I was talking to her. It had been only 2 weeks, but this was what she knew she had to do in order to graduate on time. And I'm not sure if I could make that choice or not. She also introduced me to other of her cousins. She had many family members who did not finish school. So for her to stand up and say, no, this is really important to me. I made this promise to my dad when I was 8 that I was going back to the reserve, but I was going to finish school, and I'm going to do it even if it means putting my children with with other family members. That was incredible to me. So I was grateful for the chance to tell her story, and I hope that it inspired others, and also that it helped the rest of the population of Alberta realize the lengths that some people go to That's it. Thank you.